preview the Tampa Bay Rays for 2026, up next on Fantasy Baseball Today. Welcome to On the Beat, a mini team preview series we're doing here on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast. I am Chris Towers, and I'm joined by an old friend. Ryan Bass used to be a video host for CBS Sports. For those of you who can remember, 8-10 years ago, yep, Ryan used to do a bunch of fantasy baseball stuff with us here at CBS Sports. Lovely to see Ryan here. And he is the Tampa Bay Rays TV reporter, also a pre- and post-game host for Rays broadcast. Make sure to give him a follow on X at Rye_Bass. What you can expect for these team previews, we're going to do all 30 teams over the next month. One or two big fantasy questions. We're going to bring in people who know the teams inside and out, a sleeper and a breakout pick. We'll have one team preview per day for the next month leading up to the start of spring training. And we're starting with the Rays, which is good because I don't know what to make of the Rays right now. They lost Brandon Lowe. They lost Pete Fairbanks. They lost Shane Baz. They lost Adrian Hauser, Christopher Morel. They lost Steinbrenner Field. They've added Cedric Mullins, Steven Matz, and mostly a whole bunch of prospects who won't matter in 2025. The one who may is Jacob Melton. Is Melton possibly looking at a starting job for the Rays in the outfield and after the trade from the Astros?
Well, first of all, Chris, I remember fondly the days back in 15 and 16 when we would do, 50 to 100 player updates a day on the player pages for Fantasy Baseball Today. So this is a nostalgia for me, my friend. It is good to see you.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm so grateful to be joining you guys on this series. And so, look, in terms of Jacob Melton, that was one of the key centerpieces in that 3-team trade where the Rays felt comfortable parting with Brandon Lowe, who was their longest tenured player and arguably one of the best players in franchise history production-wise when he was on the field for the Rays. But when you look at Melton, the Rays were really intrigued by the prospects of him, but they have a log jam in the outfield right now. And that's why I don't think for the time being now, things could change in spring training. And obviously, Kevin Cash, Eric Neander, and this Rays front office will explore all options about how they want this club to look in 2026. But I think when it comes to Melton, you can expect either back end in September call-ups of 2026 or into 2027, if there is a season, 2028 and beyond, where his impact will be felt on a more consistent basis. I think when you look at this Rays outfield, the addition of Mullins there, obviously you've got Chandler Simpson, you've got Josh Lowe, Johnny DeLuca, Richie Palacios, depending on where he plays. There's just a host of outfielders. And Jake Fraley, obviously Ryan Valade is another one. They've got a lot of guys that can be, corner outfielders, can play center field. Obviously, you've got Mullins and Chandler Simpson who can both play that spot. So the Rays are going to be flexible with what they do in their outfield, positioning. Obviously, that's a reason why they felt comfortable parting with Jake Mangum. So I think when you look at Jacob Melton, it's not a 2026 impact. I think it's beyond that. But listen, anything can happen in spring training. And if he comes up and makes, a surprise impact, I wouldn't be shocked to see Kevin Cash and Eric Neander, give him an opportunity on the opening day roster.
It is fair to say this is a kind of state of transition for the Rays. It's been a strange few years with the stadium, new ownership, everything that's been going on. And one of those stalwarts that they lost this offseason was Pete Fairbanks. They declined his option. He ended up signing a few hundred miles south with the Marlins. There are still some very talented relievers on this roster, though. And, Edwin Uceda, a couple other guys. Who do you think leads the team in saves in 2026?
Yeah, so I think the Rays are going back to their closer by committee philosophy that Kyle Snyder, Kevin Cash, and this group has had previously. You remember back in 2020 in that shortened COVID season, they tied a major league record by having 12 different players not just save, only to break it a year later when they had 14 different game savers. So, I think when you look at that philosophy, we're going to be getting more geared towards that trend for the Rays in 2026, as opposed to what you saw last year and the year prior, which was Pete Fairbanks being the guy in the ninth inning or later. Now, I think you brought up Edwin Uceda. He's a guy that the Rays really, really like in high leverage situations. We saw last year struggled a little bit early on, but the numbers started to come back to where the Rays had envisioned they were going to be. And he's a guy they really like in that spot. I would also say Garrett Clevenger is one to watch, the lefty for the Rays, who's now the longest tenured member of that bullpen now that Pete Fairbanks is with the Marlins. He's somebody that that Kevin Cash certainly loves to deploy in those high leverage back into the bullpen, 7th inning or later situations when they need a high quality out. And then Griffin Jacks, keep in mind the Rays acquired him last year in that 1-for-1 trade with the Twins for Taj Bradley. They love Jacks. They actually toyed with the idea of Jacks entering the rotation to start 2026, but it looks like they're leaning more towards having him in the bullpen. He's a guy that can eat up those high leverage innings. They love his pitch usage. They love the stuff that he possesses. So I would keep an eye on those 3 guys, but there's also a number of others that could enter into the mix here for high leverage situations. But those 3 would be my core to keep an eye on in terms of closer by committee that could have double-digit saves for the Rays this upcoming season.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we're back with more Rays talk.
This isn't just combat. It's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go!
Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
And we're back on FBT. Let's talk about Shane McClanahan, a guy who's been in Tampa for a while. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him in a while. Obviously, fantasy managers know all about that. Shane McClanahan, one of the best pitchers in baseball when he was healthy. What's the latest on McClanahan and his status for 2026?
I think that is the biggest question mark for the Rays going into this upcoming season, right? Is you look, this is a team, as you mentioned, in transition, and a franchise in transition. They're under new ownership now in 2026. They're back in Tropicana Field coming up this season with eyes on a potential new ballpark across the bridge in 2029 and beyond. And when you look at the longest tenured players on this roster and in this franchise, Shane McClanahan is one of them. And this is a guy who, when we know at his peak as an all-star, is one of the best pitchers in baseball. It's undeniable the stuff that he has, his electric fastball, the off-speed pitches that he possesses, and how good he can be on the mound in key situations for the Rays. But I think last year was a true disheartening setback for him. There was a lot of expectation coming off Tommy John surgery in 2023 that Shane could reclaim that form, and we saw it a little bit in spring. And then you had the triceps injury in terms of the nerve, and that has been really tricky. He tried coming back multiple times, just didn't feel comfortable with it. There was this talk of after he got injured in spring, well, he's only maybe a couple of weeks away. Then it became a couple of months, and then we didn't see him at all. It is wild, Chris, that he has not pitched in a game since August of 2023. I believe Paul Skeens was in college at that time. I mean, it just, when you think of the timeline, like, it is absolutely nuts that he has been away from a major league mound for that long. In terms of his prognosis, right? Everything we've heard from Kevin Cash to Eric Neander, and I spoke with both at the MLB winter meetings in Orlando. Kevin Cash said, has had a good offseason, felt good going into the offseason. He's got a ball back in his hands. They're going to have a lot of conversations into spring training and towards the end of it, as long as he continues to stay healthy, on innings and workload. They need him back on the mound. They know that. They want him to be the ace of this staff. And they know the way he can command a starting rotation when he's healthy. As for Neander, he was a little bit more careful. He said with those expectations, the prognosis, as he said, is good. The hope and belief based on the medical experts they've talked to is that he will be a full participation in camp and a full go. I've seen some of the videos that he's posted on social media. Seems like he is at least getting back into form and more comfortable with where his triceps and elbow is. But again, there's going to be a traditional buildup here. So I would play it cautious when it comes to Shane McClanahan, but if he's got a clean bill of health coming out of spring training, and there's an expectation that he will, of course, have an innings limit. The Rays do that with a lot of their starters. We saw that this year, especially with guys towards the end of the season. But when he gets towards that, when I start to determine what that innings limit will be, I'll be interested. But we know Shane McClanahan, you get 5-6 innings of him. If that can be kind of the continued pace as we go throughout the season, he's going to be a really electric player and pitcher if and when he is healthy.
Potential fantasy sleeper, and we got a couple more. You've mentioned the log jam in the outfield, but there's talent out there. Tell us about a couple of sleepers in the outfield.
Yeah, I think when you look at what the Rays can do outfield-wise, I look at two guys in terms of potential, not bounce back, but maybe under the radar breakout candidates for the Rays. And one of them is Josh Lowe. And I think it's easy to understand why, right? Because we saw a glimpse of it in 2023 when he had his breakout year. And he was able to hit 292. He had 20 homers. He had 30 stolen bases, 32 stolen bases to be exact, 83 RBIs. That is what this team, this franchise, and this front office believes is in there for Josh. If and when he can consistently stay healthy. He had that hip surgery that really bugged him in 2024, dealt with oblique issues then last year, wouldn't you know it, opening day, he blows his oblique, running down the line to first base. And you just feel for the guy because he works so hard, and he's worked so hard to get back. And I remember this year, the question was, all right, when he gets back, can he be healthy? And he was uncomfortable even when he came back. And then you saw little flashes of him, in terms of the potential that he can show. But that's a guy that I think, again, he's rehauled his offseason workout regimen. He's trying to lean more into flexibility, making sure that he can have that swing that we know that can be dynamic. So if he can stay healthy, remember, he played 135 games in that season. I think he is a bounce-back candidate onto the radar, especially with his stolen base ability. The other guy, because of the playing time and because they're going to rely on him to be that veteran presence, is Cedric Mullins. And I think from him, and I know a lot of people are going to talk about Chandler Simpson, and we can have a breakout conversation on him. But when it comes to Mullins, look, we may never see that 6 WAR that we saw from 2021, but I still think his lefty bat, what we saw to begin last year, and how explosive he was, especially in April, he showed flashes of that MVP caliber form. I think being comfortable here with the Rays, being able to hit at Tropicana Field, a temperature-controlled park, obviously more of a pitcher's park, but I still think his ability to play every day and really have an opportunity to bounce back could be something. Keep in mind, this is a guy with that, we talk about Josh with that rare combination of power and speed. Cedric is another guy. I mean, you look annually since 2021, 15 or more homers, 19 or more stolen bases. That kind of production for an under-the-radar, late-value draft pick, I think could be pretty valuable if and when he does get an opportunity to stay on the field every day. So both of these guys, I think, are injury question marks, right? With Mullins last year up and down, with Josh specifically, but those two are ones I have my eye on in terms of production in the outfield for the Rays, because they're going to need it. They had the worst outfield production group of any team in Major League Baseball last year.
Who's your breakout pick for this team?
I think we saw a glimpse of it last year, and that's why I think he has an opportunity to do it this year. No, it's not Junior Caminero. I think that's a dynasty pick, and I think that's somebody who's going to be playing at an elite level for a very long time. I think it's Chandler Simpson or Jonathan Aranda. I'm going to start with Jonathan Aranda, and the reason I want to go there is because prior to the wrist injury that he suffered at the trade deadline, and that kept him out for the final 2 months, he did come back in that Toronto series prior to end the season. I think you saw specifically as somebody that this organization drafted as a 17-year-old shortstop out of Tijuana because they loved his raw hitting ability. And you started to see glimpses of that. He was a minor league player of the year. He was exceptional in AAA for the Rays. And it just didn't translate for his first couple opportunities to the big leagues until last year. Now, I know what some people are going to say. Well, Steinbrenner Field helps with that. And certainly it did. You see his pop numbers, and a lot of that was to the pull side and what he was able to do. But the raw power that he has, I think can and will translate when he does get back into Tropicana Field this year. His the way that he doesn't have elite bat speed, but he's more selective at the plate. We've seen that a little bit more this past year. And I think last year wasn't a fluke. Prior to the injury, he was an all-star and one of the best hitting first basemen in all of baseball. And you looked at his numbers, it's pretty elite based off, some of the guys he was compared to. He was right up there in terms of average and what he could do with the bat with Aaron Judge last year in the early part of the year. So I think he's somebody that, as long as he can come back and be healthy, which all indications are that he will be, he's no issues with the wrist. This offseason is going to play in the World Baseball Classic. He's somebody that I think could be a potential 25-plus, 30-plus homer guy and also hit for a high average and also walk rate too. Chandler Simpson, I think it's self-explanatory because in his time last year, hit 295. His bat-to-ball ability was exceptional. The Rays continued to praise that. It was his defense they wanted him to continually get better at, and you saw the progression he made after being sent down last year. He has 60 stolen base potential. And I think that's somebody, when you look at the way he can get on base, the frequency with which he will get on base, he's not going to hit any home runs. That's not in his game. His game is totally get on base, improve that on base percentage, have a high average, and steal bases. I think both of those guys, Aranda and Simpson, are going to be two that I think fantasy owners will love next year. The question is, will Simpson be an everyday regular? Could he see some time at second base with a hole there too? He did play middle infield at Georgia Tech. I don't think that's going to be his primary position. I think the outfield, one of those corner spots, will be specifically in left. But I think Chandler and Aranda are two of the guys that are cornerstones of this franchise, not just in 26, but in beyond as well.
All right. Big thanks to Ryan Bass for helping us make some sense of the Tampa Bay Rays for 2026. Make sure you follow him on X at Rye_Bass. And for more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to the first of our On the Beat team preview series. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye.